Hello and welcome. Many of you are probably aware that a forest operation like a clear cut can actually create a lot of good pollinator habitat. Oregon has many native pollinators, and more people are thinking about ways to help take care of them. So a clear cut is a pretty major disturbance. It does a lot of good things from the perspective of a pollinator. It creates some new nesting habitat, and especially it produces a riot of new growth of many different species of flowering shrubs and herbs. I'm standing here in a clear cut. I think it's about 3-year-old. Hasn't had a lot of herbicides, and you can see just an amazing number of different flowering shrubs and flowering herbs that have developed in this time. All that's great for native pollinators. So the habitat that we get from doing a clear cut comes with a couple dilemmas. One, under forest practices rules in Oregon, we still have to reestablish a forest. And all that wonderful growth that the pollinators like also represents competition for our new seedlings. Another issue is that this wonderful new growth that we have in this rebounding forest is also fairly temporary. As soon as the young Douglas fir trees close canopy, then it goes away. Let's talk about both of those. We did a couple earlier videos looking at some ways to help manage this dilemma of competition and seedling establishment. Hopefully you might look at those. One talks about spot sprays, and the other one talks about purposeful skips in our herbicide treatments. The other limitation we have has to do with the fact that this is a fairly short-lived abundance for the pollinators. So again, we might look to other places on a forest property that have a more enduring opportunity, such as a landing, a meadow, or a roadside area. We also did a couple short videos talking about your opportunities there. We can also try to extend the time that a young plantation has these different flowering and nesting resources in it. There aren't a lot of possibilities there because, as I say, it depends on how quickly the trees grow and close crown. So the main opportunity we have there is to change the density that we have in our stand, in our young plantation. That is, we can play with the arrangement and the spacing distance of the seedlings we plant. I'm here in a clear cut which represents that. It has a couple different demonstration or trial spacings. What we have tried to do is plant seedlings at some different species in a variable density approach, where rather than going out and planting everything on a strict grid, 10 by 10, 12 by 12, we try to mix it up, make it a little clumpy and a little gappy. So some trees are going to be a little closer and some trees are going to be farther apart. The trees that are closer, we're not going to gain anything, right? They're going to close canopy soon. But the bigger gaps that we have, those create spaces where those flowering resources can persist longer into the stand and be providing that flowering resource for those pollinators for a longer time than would happen if we had just gone out and planted on a grid. So the variable density approach sounds great. It actually probably is pretty great from that perspective of providing some more varied habitat for bees and other wildlife. A lot of things like these open conditions. But it does create a few management challenges. So having in your mind, let's go out and plant at this variable density when you're working with professional planting crews who have for years gone out and very purposefully planted at a very specific spacing, that might be hard to change them. You can tell them that, and then when you get out there, things aren't as variable as you think. So I think it's doable, but it just takes a little different thinking and a little more advanced planning as you prepare to make a planting that uses the variable spacey, clumpy, gappy kind of approach. Talk to your planters. Maybe give different planters different spacing targets. There are several different approaches that might make sense to you, but they also have to make sense to the planters so that you come out with something that looks like what you imagine. And of course, if you can be out with them when they're doing that to help make sure they understand and are following through on it, that would be great too. Once you got them in the ground, of course, hopefully at a little variable spacing, we know not every seedling survives the first year or two. You may or may not need to go replant. Take a careful look at it before you decide to replant. The skips, the dead trees that create little skips and gaps, those might be at a level that are totally acceptable or even advantageous to you from the pollinator point of view. So if you have a high enough success rate to meet your replanting, your restocking objectives, you're within the Oregon Forest Practices guidelines, but there's a little extra space here or there, well, maybe you can skip the idea of going out and replanting. And once you have them fully established, I know it hurts sometimes, but think about going out and doing your young stand thinning or your pre-commercial thinning a little extra early while the trees still are sharing that space with the other flowering shrubs and haven't killed them off. And then you can extend that shrub flowering stage a little longer into the life of the stand. The point I'm trying to get across here is you have some limited options in trying to extend the flowering period in a plantation, and those efforts do come with some costs and challenges. We want to still manage the competition enough to be successful in our reforestation, but depending on what your weed pressure is, blackberries or something, you may not want to do that. Some people hate the idea of another 2 or 3 years of struggling with blackberries. So it'll depend on your situation of what you have and what you're willing to do. You can also think about how many hardwoods, how much competition you want from hardwood species, maples or cherry, and that's a decision you might make as you go and do your pre-commercial thinning. And you have to be thinking about how much rate of growth might I be willing to give up for this competition, which is giving me some other benefits. As you try to figure out how to balance your objectives of growing trees and also providing habitat, you have to kind of find a new balance. How much slash and woody debris is comfortable for you to leave? How much brush competition are you okay with? How many hardwoods do you want to leave? But in the end, maybe you just have to get a little more comfortable with things being a little more messy. Good luck.